Hello to all my imaginary friends. This is going to be a bit of a rant on the Second Amendment. I will try and make this short and sweet. My views on the Second Amendment, if I had to sum it all up, is to say that the Second Amendment is not about guns. And I don't say that in the way that, oh, you shouldn't have guns. In fact, I would say just the opposite. Because the Second Amendment is not about guns, you should have things that are worse than guns. You see, it talks about the bearing of arms. And arms are not simply firearms. Arms are anything and everything you would need to defend yourself against a tyrannical government. It is anything and everything that you would need to defend your own personal safety, to defend your property, to defend the safety of those you care about. Now, I will try and be as explicit as possible in what I am saying, but please understand that there are certain things that I cannot explicitly say, but that I can only allude to due to not wanting this video to get taken down or to get in trouble, so to speak. But in the inclusion of arms, I would also say that cyber defense would qualify under the Second Amendment. Your ability to protect the privacy of your data, I feel, is quite well covered under the Second Amendment. That if you're able to defend yourself from government cyber attacks, that is just as important as defending yourself from government overreach with firearms. This also goes into one of my points from an earlier video where I mentioned legal defense. Legal defense, I would say, is just as important as physical self-defense. Because a lot of the time, these governmental institutions will not come after you with a police raid in the middle of the night. A lot of the time, these institutions will come after you with a piece of legislation that will fine you into poverty. That it will fine you, and you will no longer be able to have your car. It will fine you, and you will no longer be able to own your firearm. It will fine you, and you'll no longer be able to do the things that you were normally able to do with your property. You will not be able to collect your own water. You will not be able to drive your own vehicle. You will not be able to produce your own gas or your own food. Now, do they need police knocking at your door late at night to do that? No. They just need a bit of legislation. A bit of legislation that requires you to be bogged down in paperwork and red tape. A bit of legislation that requires you to pay a fine to go and to do something with your property that without the government you would simply be able to do safely and competently. But I begin to get a little off topic. The Second Amendment applies to more than just firearms. It applies to anything and everything you need for your own personal defense. Whether that's knives, whether that's guns, whether that's explosive devices, incendiary devices. Anything that you would need for your self-defense. And to go further into the digital aspect of it, your right to digital anonymity. That could be considered a form of self-defense, defense of your privacy, of your private information. Your right to anonymity. Your right to not be monitored. That I would say this is part of it as well. The reason I mention this is because there are many bans on firearms. Many bans of the parts and the pieces required for firearms. Bans on 30-round magazines, bans on 20-round magazines. bans on certain grips, bans on certain ways to attach any sort of attachments, bans on scopes, bans on certain sights, bans on certain barrel lengths. These are all inconsequential because it's not just about firearms. And it's not just about the digital side of it, but it's also about manufacturing. It's also about the manufacturing of firearms. It's also about the manufacturing of anything and everything needed for your self-defense. So when I say that the Second Amendment is not about firearms, that it's not about guns, there's a caveat to that. That the Second Amendment is not just about guns. It is about self-defense. Self-defense from criminals who would wish to do you harm, self-defense from tyrannical governments who wish to impose upon your rights, wish to tell you, no, you cannot live your life without us. That you cannot live your life in a way that is self-sufficient. Because you would deny us, the government, its purpose. So that the only way you can exist is dependent on them. And that is not living. The Second Amendment is not about firearms. It is about self-defense. It is about the implicit threat between a tyrannical government and its citizenship. It is the implicit threat of the citizenry, of we the people, to say, if you push us, we will push back and you will lose. So the next time you see legislation about the ban of a certain magazine or a certain scope, certain barrel length, or certain stock, or certain whatever, remember this. The Second Amendment is not just about guns.